Dude, how goes it?
It's growing great.
Uh-oh. He froze.
No.
There we
are.
are.
A few months ago. There we are. Sorry.
Yeah,
it's
going
good. Great, even though we're having some type of internet issue there. But I will say that I'm super excited to be back. We've been gone, I feel like, for 3 weeks.
I know.
It's like, I'm like super excited.
It's always like one thing after the other. Like we do as best we can to be as consistent as possible, but life happens sometimes, and that's okay. That's all good.
Well, okay. So for anybody that's rejoining us, we've taken a couple of weeks off. We had we had a conference that Jeff's team and I we had to put on. We both then had life that intersected with the time of the show, but we're back and I'm really excited. Like I feel like the time away has also been cool. It's been nice to nice to kind of catch up.
Yeah, it's kind of like a nice way to just get our heads back into the space we want to be in, which is nice.
Yeah.
Now I'm just trying to find my notes because I did actually take notes. There it is. I got notes.
I'm ready.
I have them. Rich vibes.
I've got my notes. Yes.
Rich, how are you, sir? I feel like it's been forever since we've seen you, dude.
Dude,
it's good to have you.
Man, I've been saving up all my Star Trek stuff just for you.
And it's Star Trek Day today, right?
Yes, exactly. It is Star Trek Day today. 56. Is it 56 years ago? 56 years ago. Star Trek, The Man Trap, the episode The Man Trap, came out today. And yeah, it was a really, really cool thing.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, somebody, and I don't think I actually realized it. And then I was in one of the sessions today at a conference I was at for the last couple of days, and someone mentioned, "Oh, did you know it's Star Trek Day?" I'm like, "Wait!" I opened up Twitter, and it was like the first thing that popped up on Twitter: "Happy Star Trek Day" or whatever they said. I'm like, "Oh!" I'm like, "This is perfect." I just hope Rich is on the show tonight.
Yeah, I'm like super excited about this. I will also say that, like, man, Star Trek Day was heavily complicated by the news that came out of the UK today. Actually, my heart goes out to all of the UK fans because I even saw the actress that plays Counselor Troy. She said, I wish that she could celebrate, but with the passing of the Queen, like, there were all these fans that it was just a really rough day. But I know that there were a lot of fans in the UK that posted all about Star Trek, trying to find ways to, like, kind of brighten up the day. And but yeah, it was real intense. It was a real intense day. It seemed like everything exploded on Twitter all at once today.
Yep, absolutely. And Rich, Rich is from the UK, so, like, Rich, you let us know, what's the sentiment like over there? What's the vibe? How are you doing, and how are people in general doing?
Yeah,
that'd be good to know. So listen, we're gonna. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ryan. Go ahead.
Oh no. I'm like, yeah. It's and see, Rich has responded. It's sad news. I just think about how it's like institutions, like how things are, like how you just become accustomed to a thing and then it changes. Mm-hmm. And so I always think that's the hard thing, is like how to deal with the change.
It's so true. When something that has become sort of, as you said, an institution, or it's become kind of a staple for you, the tendency when that changes is to feel the disruption emotionally, because that's natural. That's how we're humans. That's how we respond. But sometimes it's nice to be able to step back a little bit if we can, and just kind of get some perspective on what's happening. So hopefully that's what's going to happen for everybody. I was talking to somebody, a vendor. That's just so true, Rich. I was talking to a vendor today who was in one of my sessions, just having a conversation, and he's from the UK. He's lived in the United States for the past 10, 12 years. So he said he doesn't feel as strong of a connection to it anymore, or to the monarchy and the royal family, things that go on there. But he's like, it's still, as you said, Rich, it's been a constant for so long that's not something that just goes away overnight, where you're like, oh, well, okay, well, we move on. Like, sorry she's gone, we move on. But wish the best for everybody in the UK and going through this right now, because it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to jump into it tonight. We got a really, really good show. It's a lot of fun. We got Andor coming in just a few weeks. And so we'll jump into it in a second, but we're going to do Q&A tonight. And it's going to be a lot of fun, not just because we're doing Q&A from stuff Brian and I both pulled from, but also the idea is we're going to go through a bunch of questions and answer things that either people thought they wanted to ask or never thought to ask before. And just hopefully, we're not a big lore show in general, but I think we've got a fair amount of nuggets of interesting stuff that people are going to be surprised by. That'll be a lot of fun. So shall we get into it, Ryan?
Let's do it.
All
let's
right.
let's jump into it.
Oh, here we go. All right.
Hey.
Oh, now the space. We're back in the space. It's cool.
Exactly. I can stretch out finally. Exactly. I was in that little square before.
You're like, I feel like trapped in this little box. The last couple, recently we've had some guests on the show. That's been a lot of fun. Chris from Dark Side Divas, and then we had Brian on. Does a lot of the Star Wars stuff in Buffalo, New York, and really good people. And we will have some more guests in the near future, especially when Andor's out. We've got a list of guests that we're going to be working on having on the show, but we'll be intermixing it between Ryan and me because it's Ryan and me. Like, this is the show that we do. So, like, guests are fun, but we still got to come back to our roots for sure. But yeah, tonight, this has kind of like been part of our little bit of a journey to Andor over the last month or so. Yeah, doing different episodes that sort of give you the ability to just kind of catch up a little bit and figure out what is Andor going to be like, and not just. And this is kind of how we do, even with Obi-Wan, when we did the kind of that path to Obi-Wan or the road to Obi-Wan. All of our episodes weren't really about like what like teasers for the show. It was more of how to get your mind in a place for the types of stories that we might encounter in these shows. So we're going through a lot of different things to get you kind of prime the pump a little bit. If that's a metaphor or analogy that works for anybody younger than 40, priming the pump, or if you're not in the nautical space, then priming the pump is a thing that used to exist.
I swear I have way too many of those that I use, and everybody's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm waiting for the day that someone points out that the shape of the phone on the iPhone is still in the shape of like a handset."
Yeah.
And I'm waiting for that to just become like a square or like some type of rectangle, because my kids have never seen like a phone with like a corded
oh dude,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I saw actually
one of the really big numbers that you had to like. I remember all the old phones you'd have to like spin like that,
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
When I saw a TikTok yesterday where somebody was a woman and her kids were at a house. I think it was a house that had a family member's house or something that had an actual like handset phone on the wall with a cord on it. And the kids were like, "What is that?" "Well, it's a phone." "Oh," she goes, "Why is there a sound?" She goes, "That's a dial tone." "What?" "It's working." "Wait, what do you mean it's working?" "You can call me. I can call you with this?" And then showed her kids how to like actually push the numbers in. She goes, "I can call your cell phone?" She goes, "Yeah, call my cell phone." Dials the numbers. She's like, "What? How is that a thing?" And I'm not making fun of anybody. Like, it's wild because there's like a whole trend in videos, like shorts on YouTube and on TikTok and other places where people like to say like the what's Jenny's phone number? Like, what's Jenny's number? And they asked people like, what year were you born? I don't know, 95 or whatever it was. And they said, "What's Jenny's number?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" And then of course somebody our age is like, "Oh, 8675309." And I actually, the first couple times I saw one of those, my thought was, "Oh, that's pretty funny." But then I realized, why were you quizzing somebody who was born 10, 15 years after that song, like, even was popular, if they would know it? Of course they're not going to know it. Like, why would they know what pop culture was 15 years before they were even born? Like, I actually commented on someone's video. I'm like, why is this actually funny? I would not expect someone born in 1995 to have any idea what that song is. Like, it's anything with a phone. Like, how do you not know what a telephone is? Because they were born 20 years after the last time that was ever relevant? Like, why would you care?
I'll tell you right now, it speaks to Star Wars' staying power. Star Wars comes out like 1977, and I mean, we're still talking about it. We're still talking about Star Wars. People
Star Trek 2,
Star Trek 2, and Star Trek and Star Trek 2 Wrath of Khan. I
see what you did there. Nice.
The really funny thing is to see Rick Springfield. He needs to be working harder. I don't know why I'm using that as an example, but it's like while we were at So Jeff knows I had to go to a conference, and I don't know why, but we ended up talking a bunch about like 1980s music, and then we went to a place that we could request songs, and I had all of this stuff. I will say this, and this vindicated me both by my music choices and also as a parent, is my daughter came to me and said, "Do you know about this guy David Bowie?" And I was like, "You mean Ziggy Stardust?" Yeah, I happen to know of him. And she's like, "He's a really good singer." And I was like, I have succeeded as a parent.
You're like, that's it. Chapter closed.
Yeah,
good night, everybody. Thank you.
you don't need to go to college now. Like, you don't need to be it. I am successful.
You've blessed this.
Exactly. I'm there. But I will say that, Jeff, while I was there and while I was talking about 80s music and everything, like, Jenny and everything else, the one thing that came up was I ran into a friend of ours who's also a viewer on our show, Gorov. And
awesome.
Yeah, and by the way, Gorov says hi, and if you catches this on the replay, hello, Gorov.
Hey, girl.
But I wanted to say that he had a really great question, and I feel like it might be a great way to start off tonight's show on some of our Q&A. So he had a great question, and it was, is there, and I'm gonna run this at you. I'm gonna run this at you, okay. And I'd love to hear your answer. I gave him my answer there at the conference floor.
Okay.
And so it was, has a plot hole been introduced when Obi-Wan and Anakin are fighting in A New Hope? It's actually right before they fight. Vader walks in and he says, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. And the question is, given the Obi-Wan show, and given the fact that Darth Vader was definitely not a Padawan when last they met, does that introduce a plot hole? How do you feel like the series deals with the when I left you, I was but the learner, now I am the master? How do you resolve that?
Interesting. So I tend to be very optimistic about these sorts of things. I don't tend to dwell on them a whole heck of a lot, at least not in the negative way. Not that people, not to state that anyone thinking about this differently than I do is somehow a negative to my positive. This is not binary. So the way that I view it is, first off, taking the Obi-Wan series out and what happened there, I view it as like pretty simple. Obi-Wan even says it in the original movies, and says that he's more man than machine now, twisted and evil. He basically, Obi-Wan, putting aside the gaslighter that he is acting as, putting that aside for a minute, he if we just stick with storytelling, he is talking about Vader as if he is that person is different than Anakin. And I think from a certain point of view, as we've talked about, or as you've brought up several times, that could easily be seen as he's gaslighting, at worst, and at least he is manipulating Luke into doing something very particular by leaving out certain pieces of information. But I think there is a level of truth to he is not the same person anymore, because Vader has accepted who he is as a Sith, let's just say, label it that way, and has committed to his decisions in that form of himself, period. And Anakin would not have done that, but Vader is more than willing to do those things for it, whatever the reasons that Vader happens to have. Now, okay, so going back and pulling the Obi-Wan show into it, and that last interaction where he says, I surely have failed you. I am so sorry. He just says, "I'm so sorry, Anakin." And he goes, "You didn't fail me, Obi-Wan. I killed Anakin." I'm sorry for that. I apologize, everyone. I should have thrown the spoiler warning up first. I'm sorry. Where is it? Hold on. Where's my sound effect? I don't have it.
By the by, we're getting into spoilers tonight on everything.
I apologize. I just dropped a spoiler without even throwing the warning up there. Oh my gosh. Anyway, Okay,
Yeah.
we can turn off Signard.
It's going to be spoilers on everything.
Everything.
Don't worry, my darling. We're going to be doing that. We're going
Yep.
to be doing spoilers on
all
all of
night.
it.
So yeah, I think in that interaction, what it kind of distinguishes for me is that even in that moment, Anakin is still willing to acknowledge that he is Anakin, or that he was Anakin to Obi-Wan. Only does that after half of his mask is cut off, and acknowledges to Obi-Wan that you didn't fail me. I killed Anakin. Like, you didn't, fail Anakin. I killed Anakin. So we see the duality of he is Anakin, but the mask is still covering it up. He has accepted and decided he is no longer Anakin Skywalker. But I think for me, even in that moment, his acknowledgement to Obi-Wan that he has killed Anakin, we are still seeing him as Anakin inside the mask at that moment. It's not just Darth Vader saying there is no, as if Anakin was a third person. Like, there is no Anakin. I don't know what you're talking about. No, we actually see him. We all acknowledge it. It's a fully acknowledged. And I feel like it's almost a moment of, this is the demark. Like, this moment in that fight, the way that it takes care of it is in that fight, cutting half the mask and seeing him as Anakin and as Vader at the exact same time. And then that person actively saying, no, I am Vader. Done. So that the next time Obi-Wan sees Vader, he's full Vader. He is Vader. There's no question about it. There's nothing. He is 100% Vader. So I can actually see a case for, in the story and in the plot, that it's not so much a plot hole. It is a metaphor for this duality that existed, that Vader is actively telling Obi-Wan, there is no duality. This isn't a Jedi mind trick. I'm telling you, there's no duality. I don't care what you see here. That person is gone. I am Vader, period. And so, no, I don't see it as a plot hole. I obviously can identify why someone would see that as a plot hole. Totally get it. But I don't see it the same way.
Yeah, I will say that my answer kind of fit a lot alongside of a lot of what you're saying. I think I took a cheat. Because I took
down,
left, right. By the way, like, I get it, like that. New Hope's written in like 1977, and they weren't planning on one day there'd be such a thing called Disney Plus and a streaming show called Obi-Wan. So I'm gonna put that over here. Like, I get that what I'm about to say wasn't planned this way, but because episode 3 lined up very well to that statement. When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I'm the master. And when they even talk about when they talk about Vader, like, who he was, and so it all kind of fit together. And I can see how that last big fight scene that Obi-Wan and Darth Vader has really makes that call that into, like, he isn't really a learner anymore. Like, he's a pretty powerful dude. But my answer on this was, I actually think when he's saying he's a learner, is that when you left me, I was just learning the dark side. Now I'm the master. Now I'm the master of the Force. And when you're a Sith, you don't see it as I'm a learner of the dark side. You see it as I'm a learner of the true Force.
Yes.
When you left me, I was just learning the nature of the true Force.
Mm-hmm.
When you left me, I was just on the start of that journey. That's why you were able to beat me in the desert.
Right.
But now I'm the master, not you. Mm-hmm. And that's why I even thought what was cool, and it kind of fits in my theory here, is Obi-Wan's response is, only a master of evil, Darth. And he says, you're only the master of evil. And he uses Darth, even though, again, in 1977, Darth was just his first name, because that was the way that the script was written. Mm-hmm. But it is a call out that you're only a master of evil, Sith dude. And he doesn't call him Anakin. He doesn't call him, he doesn't refer to him as his former identity, because he's twisted and evil. He's more machine now than man. He's not my friend anymore. And so my answer was this, kind of building off of yours, and that duality of personality, and also the view of the Force is, like, when you left me, I was just learning all the cool crap that I'm going to use now. Now I am the true master of the Force, of the true Force, and you aren't. and then it fits well with Obi-Wan's response. So that's my roundabout answer
I
to
like it.
how to solve this.
I like it. That's good.
Yeah.
I think, it's, I don't want to demean the idea that some of these things are plot holes, because
Yeah.
if you view it that way, and it seems like a discontinuity to you, I get it. Like, that's okay. Like, that's fine. That's not fine. That's totally okay. You can accept that you can embrace and work with these stories however you want to. My comment earlier about, like, I tend to think about this a little bit more optimistically, that as we know with any good literature and stories in general, as Joseph Campbell would probably talk about it, there's a large amount of room for interpretation by the individual and by the society. Stories are created for the purposes of people interpreting them and using them to better understand the world, the living world around them. And I think these stories in particular, and one of the reasons I love Star Wars so much, why we do what we do here, is that you can interpret these stories in the ways that make sense to you and the ways that resonate for you. If you're just going to see the negative in all of them, that's something to, if all you see is plot holes, that might be something to reflect on for yourself. Like, hey, if you're only seeing plot holes here, what is it about these stories that are not connecting with you in that way? Maybe there's something to be learned there. But I think for a lot of us, the way these stories resonate, and like the way that you viewed it and the way you described it, the way that I described it, is also kind of telling for ourselves about what these interactions with these characters actually mean to us, how they affected us, how our own background personally is manifest in how we view what they're talking about on screen. Because with my own anxiety and things like that, and my wife's dealing with trauma from cancer, treatments and all that type of stuff, there's a level of, like, the trauma side of what is happening that is affecting me emotionally and probably driving me to see their interaction in the way that I saw it. Whereas for you, there's a different set of circumstances in your life and personal things and whatever else that drove you to see that. So it's like, it's not good or bad. It's just you see it one way because you have different experiences in life, etc. Not everyone does too.
Oh no, I think everybody kind of brings their own baggage to the thing that they're viewing. It's how does the art see you? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
The thing that and by the way, like, cool question from a regular viewer, I might add, that caught me on an escalator to ask me that question. I might add, like, solid use of time.
Like, Ryan, we have to talk.
like, and hey, he sat through my session, so that's like the least that I can do. But the main thing that I want to say is that I completely agree with kind of what you're saying, and I would also say that, like, there is a desire sometimes to try to make things work within canon. I actually think this does work within canon, and it's fine. And this isn't an issue. And Gorob, by the way, like, that was a great question. Like, I really liked that question because I was able to sink my teeth into it.
Right.
Now, I also know that there are people that are on the subject of canon and making things fit together, and that, if it's not consistent, I can't stand it. I can't support it. I would say that a lot of Q&A sometimes comes out of that, like, and not this question. This question is totally cool, and I loved it. I want to put that over here. I'm just saying that there's a lot of people that are like, I need consistency in this. And you know what? Sherlock Holmes books, there were more than a dozen of those books. They're not consistent. Sometimes Watson had his limp changes from lake to lake. Like, I'm not joking. And sometimes in the same novel. And so it only depends on how much that gets in the way of your storytelling. Like, I can suspend my disbelief on a lot of stuff. Like, I didn't like the Klingons suddenly had, bumpy heads, forehead bumps. I didn't care. Like, I understood that they were in a motion picture now, and it's like, yeah, that's cool. Like, I can get behind that. Stuff changes.
With any good story, it's got to change. First off, stories have to evolve over time. All stories have to evolve. They have to. They don't stay relevant to a current society if they don't evolve. Like, any story, parable, whatever it happens to be from the last several thousand years, from any part of the world, from any culture, they have evolved. Even if you read the story now, if you read Sun Tzu or, anything from, different, just picking different cultures in the world, however that story is talked about today, some story that they think about from their history and their culture, if you went back and found books or what have you and read what the story originally sounded like, it probably would read very, very differently because it has to evolve to fit with the culture and the people as time progresses. And I think, that's thinking of classic literature and culture, cultural anthropology and all that. We're obviously talking about Star Wars here, but I think there's a level of that too, that even within something like Star Wars or Game of Thrones or The Witcher or Star Trek or whatever it happens to be, these things do have to evolve. So like Witcher is a good example of this, that if you watch the Witcher TV show, I've read the first 3 books. I haven't read all of them, the first 3 books though. And you can see the actions that occur within the TV show in the books, but what they've made in the TV series doesn't exist in the book per se. It's in the books, at least the first 2 or 3 books, it's a point in time set of stories or story that is happening to Geralt of Rivia at that time. That's what the book is about, for the most part. Okay, cool. It's great. But the linear progression of it that happens in the TV series does not play out that way in the books. It's almost like a series of captured stories that happen in these books. And I think at some point they do bring them all back around, but the books adapted it to work well for people who are viewing this, because if you tried to get people to watch a show that was purely what the books did, you probably wouldn't have many viewers, because you might enjoy it in the literary sense, reading a book and it's a fun story, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make for a good TV show. I mean, and I'm using these 2 different mediums as a way to describe it, but stories have to evolve. They have to adapt. They have to change, or else they stop becoming relevant. You and I have talked about this many times. Yeah. We both empathize with people who want something to stay consistent that way, because there's something emotionally that that they've invested personally into that when somebody takes some, as they see, a liberty and changes it, it creates an emotional change for them that they're like, I am not comfortable with this anymore. That doesn't mean it's bad or good, but from their perspective, it challenges their own personal emotions and the way they see it, especially in Star Wars. And we've unfortunately seen that with a lot of people who tend to be very toxic. With like, you can't change this. It can't be this way because this is what it's always been. It's like, it's actually not true. It's not always been that way, but you're not wanting to let go, or you're not wanting to evolve with it. And I think it's something we have to just deal with, because these stories have to adapt and they have to be flexible, or else they won't stay. They won't continue to resonate with new audiences. And honestly, if a story can't continue to resonate with a new audience, a new group of people, it's not going to stick around. Like if Star Wars didn't change and stayed the same as it was back in the 90s, even 20 years after when it was originally made, like we wouldn't be watching and talking about Star Wars. If Dave Filoni hadn't come on board and created the Clone Wars and done things like that, we wouldn't be talking about the Star Wars we're talking about today. We wouldn't. It would be something else that would have to make its way only with a new audience, and you wouldn't bring anybody along. We'd have these 2 completely different things, and that doesn't work. Like, you're going to have people who are frustrated, but it's not going to work if you try to keep everything stagnant.
Yeah,
it's probably a poor word choice, but like,
no, you have to let things breathe and change and grow. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, and I'll say this, like there was that big time where there really wasn't any new Star Wars, and by the time that the 90s came around, I remember when The Fifth Element came out. And by the way, we're going to talk about. I actually have another Q&A that's on this.
I do too. Actually, I want to follow up this discussion with a Q&A that I think is really interesting. By the way, before you continue, I just wanted to share. There was some folks on earlier, but I am streaming live on TikTok right now, so people are watching really just me, so they don't hear you, which is kind of unfortunate. So they have to wait till I start talking. But we're live streaming on TikTok right now. Us recording the Kessel chat. At some point, I'll figure out how to do that from our software, so I can do it at the same time. But either way, hi in TikTok land.
Well then I am gonna. I'll make my answer short on this.
No, don't do that.
You can come back over, but I'll just say this: like, when you don't change and evolve and iterate, right? What happens is that then the story is just beloved, and it's something that's great. It's like Barsoom, the Edgar Rice Burroughs Princess of Mars books.
Yes.
Those are great, but they're a dead literature now. That's why by the time that movie came out, that John Carter movie with all of its problems, whatever, right? Just set that, whatever. It felt derivative, even though it was the origin of things like Star Wars and Flash Gordon and all these other things. And if Star Wars hadn't grown and changed, you would have had something like, I remember how hungry everybody was when Fifth Element came out. And Fifth Element built on things from Star Wars, except added its own mythology. Mm-hmm. And even now, Fifth Element is like a thing that I can watch Fifth Element anytime. But it had Star Wars not changed, who knows? You might have had sequels to Fifth Element.
Yep.
You might have had more things that happened. But when Star Wars reoccupied that vacuum with the prequels, started to really do those things, it gave that opportunity to live again. Lord of the Rings was another one of those things. Lord of the Rings was starting to move out generationally, and all that it was you didn't have people writing Frodo lives in New York subways anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then the movies came out, and it brought in a whole new audience. And
right.
Those are some of my favorite movies. Oh my gosh, like that Lord of the Rings is great, but man, did they make a bunch of changes.
Yeah.
Tom Bombadil isn't in those movies. The Army of the Dead shows up.
I mean, the elves show up at Helm's Deep. That never happens.
Boom, exactly. And they changed things, but and at the time people were upset about that stuff. But then it's legitimately a thing that everybody got over, and now those are just movies that are beloved. But when the vacuum of Lord of the Rings happened, Game of Thrones stepped in. And Game of Thrones became a thing that everybody was like, oh, Game of Thrones. And now you have two series, House of the Dragon, you have the Rings of Power out at the exact same time, because they're both trying to reinsert their relevance.
Right.
And also by changing their stories and building off of their source materials. And I would say, if you don't like those shows because you're upset about consistency, that's your issue. Like, you got to just put that over here. You didn't have a problem about that when the Army of the Dead showed up in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. Like, everybody was cool with it. But you can have legitimate problems with that series, either one of those series. You can say, I don't like this storyline, or I don't like the costumes, or the criticisms, like the name of the game. But I just think if you're holding yourself back because you're like, no, Klingons don't have bumpy foreheads, well, then you're missing out, man, because Klingons having bumpy foreheads is awesome.
It's like, you can, if you want to sit there on your bar stool and hold court about something you're frustrated, cool. Don't be surprised, though, if a large number of people get up and walk away to the other side of the bar where people are talking and having a really good time about it. Like, it's okay to feel that way, but you can't then also be frustrated if a bunch of people say, well, that's cool, dude, but I'm going to go over, or whoever, I'm going to go over here because that doesn't bother me. I want to instead enjoy, Klingons with ridges on their head, and whatever. Exactly. Like, I want to go over here and do this thing. It's okay. Both things are totally okay, but you can't be upset because one happens because there's a reaction to your action. Like that's Newton had it. Newton said it. Like, you can't avoid it. Like, there's an equal and opposite reaction, and sometimes if those are your feelings, cool. But it doesn't mean that a lot of people don't necessarily have to agree with you. Or anyway.
Check out the Star Trek lore, though, on Jeff. He used the proper term ridges, which I was saying bumps. So solid Star Trek reference.
Am I good? Jeff. Is that that is all the Star Trek you're going to get from me tonight. All right. So I've got one for you, and you probably know the answer to this, but I do want to throw it out. It's an awesome one. I have been asked so many times, and I didn't get an image up that I could show to everybody, but I've been asked. I live in the Bay Area. You live in sort of the extended Bay Area, but we'll just call it all the Bay Area, Northern California. You probably know. We're all here. I've been asked many times by people who see either images or they've driven through, and they're like, "Dude, Jeff, I have seen so many times. Is it true that there's these big gantry cranes, so to speak, in the Oakland Harbor that load and unload cargo ships?" If you drive over the Bay Bridge, you see them. If you're driving up 880, you see them. They're really hard to miss. These huge gantries. But unlike a lot of them at other ports, these actually do have a sort of four-legged, boxy shape with a crane off the front. Could be seen as an elephant, or it could easily be seen as something that might look like an AT-AT. And I've had many people ask me in the past, that must have been where George Lucas got it. And it was actually talked about for years that, clearly that's where Lucas got it because he grew up in Modesto and came through the Bay and all these things. Is it true? Do you know if it's true or not?
Snap, dude. The fact that you're asking me this question, I might get the rug pulled out from under me here. I have only ever heard that story is true. And I will say that I just recently found out that a forest that I thought was Endor was in fact not the forest where they shot Endor. But it's actually a forest that's further up north and east. And so I've been learning lately, like, some of my practical Star Wars knowledge, like where things came from. I know that General Grievous designs came from the top of a spray bottle.
Oh,
So I'm going to
snap.
say this.
That's awesome.
I 100% know that because I can remember the documentary where I saw the guy who designed General Grievous. And it started with his bodyguards. I remember that solid. Like that's where
That's
the design
awesome.
started coming from. I know that Darth Maul's horns were feathers originally, and that they were wired onto his head.
Interesting.
And then it was only decided upon looking at it like it was a mistake. I know that the Reliant was approved with the nacelles and Star Trek 2 upside down because the production designer looked at the thing upside down and then built it with the nacelles upside down. So I know a lot of that stuff. If dimes to dollars, if you made me bet on this, Jeff, I'd say yes. The AT-AT, it was inspired by those cargo container cranes that sit outside of San Francisco. But it might just be that I wish it was that way. So I'm eager to
You
hear.
ready? You ready?
Yes.
It is a myth.
Oh,
Confirmed by George Lucas. Quote, "That's a myth," Lucas said, politely but firmly. That is definitely a myth. Those are George Lucas's words. So here's the thing. It's a fun story. It's a great urban myth. I actually think the real story is far more intriguing. But I'll try to explain. So on Disney Plus right now, if anybody hasn't watched it yet, there is a new miniseries called Light and Magic that is all about the birth of Industrial Light and Magic as a company, where it started, where it came from. It's like 6 episodes or something like that. Really, really amazing documentary if you haven't watched it. Absolutely go stream it. It starts from the very birth of it when Star Wars was first being filmed. No technologies existed to do these things. Brought all these this person was hired to bring all these creators together to make stuff happen. And they did. And it ended up Lucas said, we need to turn this into a company because we need to be able to do this over and over again and like put money into it and get a facility and all this type of stuff. Go watch the series. It's beautiful. In that, there is a scene where they specifically talk about how to create the AT-ATs. And it wasn't called that. It was just they're trying to come up with a big military-ish unit that would come in and look intimidating. And initially, the thought was by one of the designers was, this needs I want you to base it off tanks. I forget who actually got which person did it, but somebody was able to get in touch with the Norwegian military and borrow one of their tanks and said, "Here's a picture of a tank. Can you do something to this, design something, draw something up that we could put on top of this tank to make it not look like a tank?" And the person who had drawing said, "I can make it look really beautiful, but if it's got treads, it's always going to look like a tank. Like I can't make it, if it's got treads, I can't make it not look like a tank. You're going to tell, but I could do all kinds of stuff." So they went through a bunch of iterations, a bunch of drawings, but it was still kind of looking like a tank. And then this particular person, I forget the person's name, had randomly come across somewhere, like on a doctor's, like a desk or something, not desk, but like a dentist's office or like on the table. It was a book from U.S. Steel. I forget the painter's name, but it was a book that if you called U.S. Steel, they would send it to you. And it was a bunch of concept art, beautiful concept art about the future of look what steel could be made into. Cars, beautiful pictures, futuristic machines, all these things that this is what the future of innovation with steel could look like. The book is called Interface, a Portfolio of Possibilities. You could order it, anybody could call, and they would just send it to you. No problem. They would just mail it to you, and you would have it. So literally the entire design team for ILM all called up and got their own copy. They all had copies like nailed up to their boards and had this. And in it, on one of the pages, is something that's like this big 4-legged truck. On legs, boxy, military-ish, and they're like, that is it. And so they went through and they started doing some looking through it. And they're like, one of the things we realized is this thing whatever it is, needs to be anthropomorphic. It's got to look like an animal. And they actually modeled that after a dinosaur. And I forget the name, but it's this dinosaur that has this sort of like pig sort of look, but it was very, very tall and lengthy with 4 legs, would stand up on side of legs to eat, but it could walk on all 4 legs. And so they modeled it after that. They even specifically added the head with a neck that can move because they thought that'd be more intimidating. It wouldn't just be a box with guns on it. If they could put a head on it that could actually swivel, it would feel anthropomorphic and have an intimidation factor. And they originally were going to do this whole thing as practical, like get the tank, get a machine, build something on it. And Phil Tippett or sorry, what's his name? The person who was like the main head of ILM, I forget his name, came to Lucas and convinced him. Wore glasses. He's bald now. Had thinning hair at the time, but went to Lucas and convinced him we should do this as stop motion. And Phil Tippett, who was the person who did stop motion at that time for them, and so they created this design and they created it into a stop motion. And all the AT-ATs you see on Hoth, all of them, every scene with them is all stop motion. All of that is stop motion. The only thing that is practical is a set that was built for the scenes where like Luke is cutting something open and climbing up and throwing something in there, or the cockpit scene where they're driving and there's the person who's commanding the two people. Those are practical. Everything else about that scene is completely stop motion. Everything. But yes, it was built off of a design that came out of a U.S. Steel concept book, art book, purely art. It's all just like matte paintings in this book of a four-legged truck, the future of steel. That's what it could look like.
Honestly, as much as I was about to say, like because before you told this story, I was gonna say I like the myth better than the truth. Sometimes,
it's a cool myth. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's a really interesting story.
And every time I drive on the Bay Bridge, I always point to, and with my kids, I go, "Hey, you see that? ILM got the idea for the AT-AT. Looking at those things," and my kids go, "Whoa!" But I'm just gonna say that story is badass. I love the fact that they used like real concept art, and I like the idea that they wanted it to look like an animal. I will say that when I was a little kid, I was totally freaked out by the AT-ATs. They seemed unstoppable.
Oh,
they
yeah.
just seemed
they were
like
intense.
and they just seemed relentless. And I remember in Jedi, when the AT-AT kind of brings Luke to meet with Darth Vader, and I was like, "Oh no!" I was a little kid, and I was like, "Oh no! They have one of those on Endor. This is terrible." And I just remember thinking, "How are they going to fight that thing? Because they don't have fighters. They don't have fighters." But who would have guessed that tiny little teddy bears could really beat it?
I mean,
but I will say I like the real story.
It's a cool story.
It's
I saw that. I had to go back actually rewatch the episode before we got ready for the show to make sure that I had all the details right. And I'm like, it is wild the way they came up with things. Okay. I burned through a lot for that story. Your turn.
Okay.
You're up next. And then actually after you're done with your story and what we go through, let's do a lightning round because I got a few questions I think I want to fire off to you and see if you've got answers for them because I think they're good ones. I think they're good basic ones for people to kind of get their head in the place of like Andor, Star Wars if they're getting themselves prepped for it, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Gosh.
Do your question.
I had more of a personal story that I just wanted to ask you. Which is, we've talked a lot about like how we've encountered Star Wars and things that we had. Like I had like the action figures when I was a kid. My mom bought me what was a plastic bag of action figures of Star Wars from the San Jose flea market. That was it was just like how you lived in the 80s, right? All these secondhand toys. And I guess my question is the thing that made a huge impact on me was going on Star Tours when I was a little kid. And I've never asked, and we've never talked about it. I even thought about this. I was like, I don't think I've ever talked to you about Star Tours. And I wanted to know, like, when was your first time riding Star Tours? What was that experience like? Do you remember it? I remember I had to wait for hours to get on the ride, and when I got in and saw that, I was a little kid, and when I got in and saw C-3PO, and he's like kind of like standing and like doing stuff, and it's all like animatronic, I was like, oh no, that's C-3PO up there. That's legitimately C-3PO.
So I grew up in a town, two cities in Southern California. My first city until I was like 13, we grew up in a place called Harbor City. And Harbor City is kind of in the south, what we call in Southern California, referred to as the South Bay, which is south of downtown LA. There's a bunch of cities like Torrance and Manhattan Beach and places that kind of go down towards Palos Verdes Peninsula, which is the big peninsula that, if you look at a map of California, you can kind of actually, I'm looking the right way on this camera. It kind of goes down, and there's a point where Southern California comes down. There's a little peninsula, and then it makes a hard southward turn to go to Long Beach and down to San Diego area. That peninsula is called Palos Verdes. At the foothill of it, just inland where the LA River kind of comes in, there's San Pedro and a place called Harbor City, which is this long, narrow city. Okay, some context. So that's where I grew up, and that's about, if there's no traffic, it's probably a 45-minute to a 50-minute drive to Disneyland to get there. The next city I grew up in, we were maybe 15, 20 minutes away from Disneyland. It was really close. We didn't go a lot because we didn't have like a lot of disposable income as kids to go to Disneyland. Even it wasn't inexpensive at that time either. Like a lot cheaper than it is now, but it also was not inexpensive back then. But yes, I do remember going. I don't remember all of it, but I remember that I had seen Star Wars. It was not called A New Hope at that time. It was just Star Wars. I think it said Episode 4, A New Hope, but the movie was referred to as Star Wars. My dad I've told that story. I was like 5 or 6 years old. My dad played for me on VHS, and I was like, my gosh, this is amazing. And then I remember, I think I had seen Empire, and we went to Disneyland, and they took my sister and I onto that ride. And I remember seeing C-3PO and R2-D2, and I think I remember feeling something very similar. I don't remember exactly what I thought. I think I can just remember the emotions, probably very similar to what you're describing of like, how did they get C-3PO and R2-D2 at Disneyland? This is amazing. I don't remember the ride. I don't remember what you do on the ride. I don't think I've even been on it as an adult ever, because if the lines are too long, that's just not the place I was going to go. But still, I remember seeing R2-D2 and being like, it's R2-D2, or just some kind of like positive emotion about seeing the two of them there. Yes, that I think made Star Wars really real for me, was seeing them in real life. It's not just a ride where you see them on a screen someplace, but physically there. Yeah, that did a little something to my feels as a kid.
Yeah, like there was something, it was just unbelievable. There's a picture of me that I know that I can go and dig up, and I might have to share this on Twitter. And it's me with like my eyes are like so big because regular viewers of the show will know this, like I'm a huge fan of R2-D2, and you just see R2, he's like parked inside of like the Star Tours vehicle. But oh my gosh, it was that was just something else. And it was the first time it was a ride where, you know, you got in and then you did the trench run, and it was just I'd love to see people's comments on this, like if they went on Star Tours as a kid and like what that's like now. There wasn't anything like it. And then you went and saw Captain EO, and that was okay. That
was there.
Yeah, it was the Captain EO was there and everything else, but I think I might have fought to go on that ride like as many times as we could while we were there. But yeah, there was no fast pass at the time. You just like stood in these lines.
You
like,
just
in
waited.
The sun.
You just
and
waited.
Yeah, you just waited for hours. But I was thinking about that just because of all of the ways that you can now engage with Star Wars. But back then there wasn't that many ways.
No, it wasn't even a lot of books. I think novelizations of the movies, but there wasn't much else. That didn't really come around until late 80s, early 90s, whenever Heir to the Empire, I think, came out. I don't remember what the first book was that really came out and by itself. But there wasn't much. There really wasn't a whole lot back then. Yeah. Okay, I've got some stuff for you. We're going to kind of do a little bit of lightning round for the last 10 minutes, but if you've got other ones, let's throw it out too. Actually, somebody on TikTok just brought this up. So from Star Wars Rebels, the character Zeb, or Zeb Aurelius, he's what race is he? I'm blanking on his race. But if anyone's seen Star Wars Rebels, he's purple. He's on the Ghost Crew. Yeah. Apparently, and this person, thank you, West Texas Eardrop, I think that's the person's username, said that I think I've actually heard this before as well, that Zeb from Rebels, that design of a character was actually one of the original proposed designs for the Wookiees, and it was decided on to be something different. But Zeb, that's what they originally were thinking about for the Wookiees. I don't remember. Thanks for the heads up on that on TikTok. I don't remember what changed their minds on that, but they ended up reusing the design later on, because if you have a design, you might as well use it. Okay, for you, first question. Go for it. We'll make it an easy one, but you can help everybody. Where was Star Wars filmed? And when I say that, for everyone who's watching, we're just going to go with the friendly title, A New Hope. Where was the very first film that was ever released? Release date. Where was it primarily filmed?
It was filmed in studios in London, which of course, like, why am I blanking on the name? It's not Pinewood Studios. It's oh my gosh, like, what is this? It's
I don't know. I don't remember offhand.
Oh no, I know exactly what this is. Now this is like gonna drive me nuts because I have to like look at this now. Because I know this like through and through. Because that's why they use it is Pinewood Studios.
Is it Pinewood?
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Pinewood
Yeah, okay,
Studios.
great.
Yes.
That like makes me feel better because I was like, I know this. It's Pinewood Studios. So when they're filming on sets, it's in Pinewood Studios. And when they're filming outdoors, it's Tunisia.
Mhm.
So Tunisia is the location setting for Tatooine. And if you want, you can do a Star Wars tour very similarly. It's not as cool, obviously, as the Hobbiton tour, but you can go and see much of the sets are still there. And the Tunisian government didn't preserve them. It was just as it was that it became a like popular tourist destination. And now it's a real tour that you can go to. And it's not set in some crazy distance of the desert. It's like the pyramids. When people look at the pyramids, you would think, oh my gosh, that's in the desert. That's actually the view of the pyramids from that direction. If you were to turn around, there's a whole city on the other side.
They're just on the edge of the city. Yes, they're not buried out in the desert someplace. You have to hoof it out to. They're just right there.
Yeah, it's just like how they, as much as some of these shots look like, oh my gosh, they must be on the way out. Most of the way out shots are done by a second unit crew that's just filming, and they could be filming anywhere. Like there are shots of other deserts that appear in Star Wars that aren't shot by the first unit crew with Mark Hamill and Owen and Baru and everything else. It's the same setup happens in Empire Strikes Back. They're in Norway for the snow scenes. Yeah, and the snow scenes with him on the Wampa, or when he's busting out of the snow and everything. That's done like right in front of the in the hotel because they were snowed in. So it looks like, oh my gosh, they're out in the middle of nowhere. No, they're just right outside of the hotel's waiting room. In fact, it worked out great because most of the crew got to stay in the building while they shot that scene.
The crew's like, thanks everybody, appreciate it.
But yeah, Pinewood Studios in London is where they set up most of, and again, like someone can correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I feel like it's Pinewood Studios in London. That's where all the sets are. And then I don't think there's any other location settings. They shoot on location in Tunisia.
I think that's the only one. At least for the first movie, release date order movie, not chronological, but the very first one. Okay, got another one for you. I'll save one for last, but this is a fun one because people get tripped up on this all the time and they can always miss it. What does Vader actually say to Luke in Empire Strikes Back in the big reveal? What is his actual word? First off, tell us what everyone thinks it is, and then tell us what it actually is.
Oh my gosh, I just got done talking about this with my kids. I'd love you got to tell your TikTok audience too.
Oh yeah,
like,
so
let
I will tell everybody on TikTok exactly what you say here in a second.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing that everybody says wrong is, Luke, I am your father. That is not the line.
So everyone on TikTok watching right now, so you can't hear Ryan, but the answer to this is not, Luke, I am your father. Vader does not say, Luke, I am your father. That is incorrect.
Yeah, because he's correcting Luke. Because Luke says, because Vader asks him, Obi-Wan didn't tell you what happened to your father. And Luke says, he told me enough. He told me you killed him. And Vader's correcting him. He says, no, I am your father. Right. And the emphasis is I in the script, if I'm right. Like it's right there. But it's great because it's one of the most like often misquoted lines. Yep. It's like it's beam me up, Scotty. Kirk never says beam me up, Scotty. He never says it once, but it's beam me up, Scotty is like
the thing.
It's just popular. Yeah.
So for the folks watching on TikTok, the actual thing he says, as Ryan is talking about here, is that he's responding to Luke's inquiry saying, Obi-Wan told me you killed him. And he's correcting Luke saying, no, I am your father.
I am your father.
It's a small thing, but everybody quotes it wrong. Everyone's like, Luke, I am your father. No. Nope. It's not it. It sounds good. But the semantic different. It actually makes sense when you watch the scene. You're like, no, he's correcting him. So why would he say the other thing? That's a good one because most people don't know that, and I think it's a fun one. Okay, let's see. There was another one I had. Oh, this one goes back to Disneyland. Going back to you brought us Disneyland. So for people who are not sure, Galaxy's Edge. Can you tell everyone, is Galaxy's Edge in the Star Wars world building in Star Wars Stories? Is Galaxy's Edge in a real place or in a place within this galaxy, or is it just a place that only exists as Disneyland, nothing else, or is it actually supposed to be someplace that's in the galaxy?
Yeah, so this is a great question because I will say that this is what adds to the experience of what you ultimately go to. So one, Star Wars, Disneyland's all about immersion. So when you go there, and by the way, oh man, there is a great thought experience. Thought experiment that Walt Disney did to create Disneyland, and it started with if it's all of these if questions that you ask yourself. It's the Disney method for creation, which Disney uses to this day, which is like if I could do this, then it's all of these really cool thought experiments, and that's how he invented Disneyland, which is basically I need to control the experience with my I need to control the experience. And I don't want to use theaters to do it. It needs to then be something that is immersive, third dimensional, and that's how he invented Disneyland. Star Wars is the exact same way when you go to Galaxy's Edge, and it is the planet of Batuu. Right on.
Right.
And it's the planet of Batuu. And if I could also point out, Batuu, also the name of a character in The Inner Light, Star Trek Next Generation, 5th season, 18th episode. But the thing is that Batuu is a real place in the Star Wars galaxy. And because it's built to be an immersive experience, when you go under that bridge, and Jeff, you and I have talked about this, you go into that world. The sounds above you are all like legitimately, like you can hear ships taking off and landing.
And they do such a beautiful job. Like you and I talked about this after I went for the first time, and they do such a good job that it is hard not to react thinking that something is actually flying overhead. Because it doesn't just make a sound. It travels. And when you listen, it's hard not to just look up. And you do that and you realize that's inane. Why would I look up? There's clearly no spaceships, but it's done so well that it is very difficult to disconnect yourself. To your point, it's very immersive. And by the way, it's referred to as not to correct you or anything like that, but for everyone knows, it's the place, they call it Galaxy's Edge. That's the location in Disneyland. The actual Star Wars location, as you mentioned, is on the planet Batuu, and it's referred to as Black Spire Outpost. That is the name of the outpost. Yes,
that is correct. That's the outpost that you're visiting.
Yes.
And one of the things that makes it even more real is everybody that works there. You can't buy I visited Star Wars Galaxy's Edge t-shirt there. You can't. You can go buy that.
And all I got was this lousy t-shirt.
Yeah, exactly. You can go and buy that in Tomorrowland. Oddly.
Oh, I know, right?
You cannot buy that t-shirt in Galaxy's Edge. And the reason why is because they don't have a t-shirt that's like that. They don't think that they're in a planet. They don't think that they're in a recreation of a planet or a planet that's an actual destination. And that's why, as Jeff's fingers will also point out, his tattoos, everything is in Galaxy Basic. And so standard Galaxy Basic. And so you can actually, even the name tags of the people
are
that
in Basic.
Worked there.
Yes. Arabesh. This is referred to as Arabesh. Everything is written in Arabesh everywhere.
Yeah. Yep. And so it's like really cool. I loved every part of it. Jeff has a water bottle he's grabbing right now to show. You can tell everybody what you get on that. And then on one side it's bantha milk. On the other side, it's that crazy green milk that Luke drinks in Last Jedi. Which, by the way,
if you go to Galaxy, to Ryan's point, it's so immersive when you go there that if you go to Galaxy and you order blue milk, you go to the stand, you can get it just in a cup, but you can also get it like in the to-go. They actually had a strap you can wear around your neck. And this is all in Arabesh, but when I put it through a Google an Arabesh translator, I forget the name exactly, but this is the name of it's the Star Wars name of the company that makes the blue milk. Like this is the actual, it translates to an actual name of a company. Everything is done, to your point, to be immersive. These gift shops in that area are not just a gift shop at the end of a ride where you buy your pictures and look, I look funny at the end of Splash Mountain. No, you are in Black Spire Outpost. You might be able to learn after you've left that you were someplace, but they want you to feel like you are in a place. Like in a look, even all the little gift shops that are there are basically like it's stalls in a market, and they don't have a lot. It's not like they're a big, huge store. They have a few things that are different from every other stall. So yeah, it's really well done. I think it's beautiful. But yeah, it's actually featured in 2 books that I'm aware of. Someone may correct me on this, but I believe it's featured in the book called Galaxy's Edge, as well as it's featured in the book Pirate's Price, which featuring everyone's favorite pirate, Hondo Ohnaka. Yeah, he's like the main. Right. There's several different like short stories that are told in that book. That's really good too.
Hondo's also a part of a ride that you can ride there too.
Right, not Rise of the Resistance. Which one is it called?
It's the Smuggler's Run.
There it is. Yes.
But yeah, like I cannot say enough. Like it is a really cool experience, and yeah, it's a real place. When you transport there, you're in a real place in the Star Wars universe.
All right, my last question for you before I'm out of questions and we're coming, bringing this home, but I'm sure you still have some stuff too. I want to like take it away from you, but I had a question for you. Do you know, and can you tell the audience, when does the TV show Andor take place chronologically in relation to the movie Rogue One?
Okay, so it takes place before Rogue One. And by the way, like Jeff, dude, we got to talk about all your TikToks because I saw that you did, if I'm right, you did like what droid am I? Were you K2SO? Is that the
I think I got K2SO. Yes, I think so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So also one of my
Alan
favorite
Tudyk
characters...
is like, I saw that. I'm like, Alan, we're friends. Awesome.
I actually thought that was really cool. I was like, dude, I could see Jeff being K2SO. This is a smart droid. But yeah, it takes place after episode 3, probably after Solo, but before Rogue One.
Yes.
So in our movie universe, if you were to look at things like in order of here are your 3 prequel movies, then you have I think the Han Solo movie and the Obi-Wan show might be happening at almost the same damn time.
I know that sounds crazy. Actually, I think I've heard that they're like they cross over in timeline pretty closely.
They might be happening like literally weeks apart because or maybe just right after. But Leia and Luke are younger than Han. Yes. Han is in his 30s when you meet him, and Luke and Leia are in their 20s, like literally 20.
Yeah.
So, given the time difference there and how old they are, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. But Andor is happening right after that, but before Rogue One, obviously. So it's smack dab in the middle of what Obi-Wan would call the dark times.
Yes. Yep. Awesome, dude. Thank you. Those are the questions I had, like to get us ready for all this. What do you have? Anything else?
Well, I know that we're over time, but I will say this, and this is a kind of a fun question, is I always love to ask, and this is again, like I thought I'd do a little bit of different kinds of questions, not just trivia, but I always like hearing your ideas, Jeff, and you're a big lightsaber fan, and you have a lightsaber collection. And I just thought, if there was a set of lightsabers that I'd love to hear your the lightsaber you wish that you could have from the in-universe, and if you could change to any color. And I already know you built a lightsaber, so I know probably what color you'd pick. But also if you could just have a lightsaber of any color. And I know this is kind of a funny question, but I'd love to hear. I have a favorite. And I'd love to hear, what is your favorite of this?
Oh, that's tough. As you were talking, I had my first guess. I had my first thing right off the bat. But as you kept talking, I'm like, I don't know. There's some really good ones. Okay, I'm just going to go with my first. I know Adam Grant would tell me sometimes your gut isn't always right. Sometimes you're second guessing yourself is actually there's research on this. But I'm going to go with my gut feeling on this. It would be Ahsoka's lightsabers from the bulk of the Clone Wars. So
Nice.
I forget which form she practiced, but she had a primary sword and a secondary, or primary saber and a secondary saber, but they were not the same length. So very much like a samurai would have a katana and a like a wakizashi would have this shorter sword that could be used in conjunction with each other for certain styles. Um,
Yep.
she would use, sorry, somebody, I need to turn that off. She would use these duels, and she used them in reverse for most of the Clone Wars. I would like those, where she held them backwards where the blades went this way as opposed to coming straight out. I would love her sabers, and honestly, from post Clone Wars, when she actually recovers some crystals and ends up making lightsabers that have a white blade because she
Yep.
basically heals 2 Sith crystals, so undoes the bleeding, they become white. I would change that to be yellow. Yellow's not my favorite color. Purple is my favorite color just in general, but I would change them to yellow because I really, really love the idea of the yellow saber or the yellow kyber color. The white is so like cleansed and healed and all this. All the other colors seem like they represent a personality. To me, yellow is almost this interesting kind of middle ground between all of
Yeah.
that. I don't know really what it says about me, but there's something about the idea of the yellow, like Rey has at the end of Rise of Skywalker. I really love the yellow color. Also reminds me of the Temple Guards. The Jedi Temple Guards have yellow on their saber staffs. Yeah. How about you?
Oh, well, I was gonna say, dude, like your yellow color, like I actually feel like they missed a huge opportunity with Anakin. I always thought that Anakin's lightsaber color, because George Lucas's favorite color is yellow.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why
There's some fun
the
trivia for everybody.
yeah, like that's why the speed, like his race car, his personal race car is yellow. That's why the speeder that Anakin uses is yellow. That's why Anakin's pod racer is yellow. It's all of these things that speed yellow, like he loves yellow. And I thought, oh, Anakin's first saber is gonna be yellow, and that he'll get a blue saber like down the road. I just kind of thought that was what was going to happen, but it didn't. This is going to be kind of silly, because it took me a while to come around on this. When I was a kid, my favorite lightsaber was it was Luke Skywalker's from Jedi, and I loved Luke Skywalker's from Jedi. But my favorite now all time is Obi-Wan's lightsaber.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And the reason why is because it fits well. Like, I know that they didn't plan it this way, but his lightsaber when he's a Padawan is like this. Like, it's got the little ball on
like
the
a
end.
pommel or something at the end or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when he gets older and he remakes it, it still has that pommel, except it's less of a ball and it's just more of like a cylinder. And then it's got all of this, like, it's so steampunk before steampunk was a thing, and it just has this like really cool look. And I love the fact that when Luke has to build his lightsaber, it's modeled off of that. And so the more that I looked at Obi-Wan's, the more I was like, man, that's just a really cool design.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't appreciate the photo lens, like flash items that, like, make up Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. I think that those are badass. I actually think Ahsoka's are really, really cool because they took the best versions of that with like the little clip pins.
Yes.
And they're on either side. And I always thought that was really cool that that's how Ahsoka's lightsabers worked. And then this might be a surprise, but yeah, man, like I'm down with yellow. Actually, that was my favorite.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, that was my favorite part of the end of Rise of Skywalker. I had been wanting to see a yellow lightsaber for a long time. When I was a little kid, the lightsabers and the action figures that rolled up out of the arm for Luke, it was yellow.
Oh,
it was yellow because that was they could only bake in certain colors that were already there, and as it happened, the other color that Luke was yellow, the action figure, the little tiny action figure. And so when you would push out his lightsaber at a little handle, it was a yellow blade that came out. And I always thought, man, they really missed an opportunity to do that. It should have been a yellow blade. But to that end, I was going to ask you things. I actually had some really cool, like deep, like trivia questions. Like I was going to say, like, let's talk about the difference between Electrum and crystal-based lightsabers. But instead, I'll just leave it with this, which is, you've got to live in one of the Star Trek movies. I'm sorry, Star Trek movies. You got to live in one of the Star Trek movies. You got to live in one of the Star Wars movies. Where do you live?
At a place or in the movie itself?
You're in that movie. You could pick a place from that movie,
but it has to be from
live
one of
there.
the movies.
Yeah, it's gotta be
Oh,
from the movies.
I've never had to think about this before.
And again, I'm breaking our Q&A rules. I actually wanted to ask Jeff a bunch of questions because
I tripped you up because you're usually the one asking questions, and I'm like, no. I'm going to come prep for tons of questions tonight.
Yeah, and
I
yeah,
sort of. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no! It's always like fun to be like, how did what was the game that Lando and Han played, where Han wins the Millennium Falcon? Exactly. And I thought Jeff's like an encyclopedia for this knowledge. I really want to hear Jeff's thoughts on some of this stuff. So I'm interested to see. You got to live in one of those movies.
I'm going to say Takodana, where Maz Kanata's castle is. I don't know why, but that seems really interesting to me. Like, I was trying to think of all the other places. I'm like, all the other places are a little like barren or kind of gross. like even the place in Last Jedi where there's like the casino and stuff. I can't remember the name of the planet that they're on. I'm
Canto Bight.
Canto Bight. Thank you. Even that's just a little like, nah, I'm good, man. I like the idea of Takodana. I do. Like the jungles and stuff, random old castles. For some reason, that just intrigues me. I like it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's badass.
You? How about you?
I feel like that's the answer, man. Like I didn't even think about that. I always think of Cloud City just because.
Oh, okay, Bestman. All right, all right.
Be floating in the clouds, like that's pretty awesome. That's always like kind of my go-to thing. But there is a part of me that, and having recently been to New York, one of the largest cities in the world, I always think about Coruscant. There is something crazy cool about Coruscant.
There is.
I'm a big fan too of Art Deco, and a lot of Coruscant is built with all of these like Art Deco design aesthetics, and it's just beautiful to me. Like everything looks like the Chrysler Building on Coruscant.
Yeah, so. I would. Coruscant's a place I'd want to visit, like periodically, and just check it out. Go have dinner. Get on the sides, see the sights, sit in a tall building and like look over everything and have dinner. I would not want to actually live there. Like it's it's so industrial. Like the fact that there's the last remaining mountain. Like I don't even know if it's still physically in the prequels or the post prequel era, the Skywalker era, if you can even still touch it. But in the High Republic, the peak of the tallest mountain on the entire planet, of the original planet before they constructed the Agumenopolis city, which means World City. The peak is available. It's in a public park in Senate Square that you could that Lena So, who's the what is the chancellor, the Galactic Chancellor, she the Chancellor of the Republic, she can walk up and physically touch it. It's part of it's part of a park. You can walk up and touch it, 10, 15, 20 feet high, coming up out of the ground. Because basically the entire Agumenopolis was built around this mountain, and it's supposed to be like a mountain the size of Everest or even taller, but that's not there anymore. And so like the idea that there's nothing natural about the planet anymore, even the weather is manufactured, just it would be an interesting place to visit for me, but I'd want to have a place to go home to, like that is actually a natural world that I could go back to and come check this out periodically. Sort of like Chandrilla. Chandrilla is, I think, something, and you see Chandrilla briefly on I think it's Chandrilla. They see briefly on The Force Awakens when it's blown up. That's where the Republic, the New Republic, is located. It's blown up. You only see You only see it briefly. Or Alderaan. I mean, Alderaan was also gorgeous, like absolutely beautiful.
Oh yeah, Alderaan's like I always like in this case it's the past, but in the future past, where they're able to show the balance between technology and nature. Alderaan's like that. I love that. I love when they're able to like really show that off. But I will say that like there's a part of me too that's like, the where Jyn Erso and her family, where Jyn's growing up with those black sand beaches, I was also like, yeah, I'm not against that either. But then that's Iceland, and then I'm like, why am I not living in Iceland?
Right? It's gorgeous.
So
Absolutely
yes,
gorgeous.
exactly. Yeah.
All right, we are going to wrap up tonight. This was a lot of fun, dude. I'm glad we got to go through some of the trivia, some other details, some cool stories. Like, hopefully that's helpful for everyone who's been watching or catching us on the replay. Team Replay, it's totally good to be part of Team Replay. Hopefully some of this information was helpful just to get the motivational juices flowing. Andor comes out on the 21st, I think. So it's like a week and a half, 2 weeks away. It's really close, but it's okay because you've got House of the Dragon and you got Rings of Power. There's lots of cool stuff to watch right now. I will say one bit of sad news is it looks like the Bad Batch season 2 is getting pushed. It looks like it's getting pushed to January of 2023, which is just, like, dang it. I was hoping that like Andor would go and we get this, but that's okay. That's all right.
Season 2 of Strange New Worlds seems to be coming out pretty darn soon.
Oh,
and if you're also interested in some animated fun times, Lower Decks is currently out too, although you have to have a subscription to Paramount Plus. But I will say that there's a lot of really cool like stuff that's coming out. And yeah, just like what you said too, like I've been watching House of the Dragon. We got to do a show about this. I've been watching House of the Dragon and the new Rings of Power, and I've got pros and cons for both. I am super excited. I've enjoyed both of those shows. I also have my notes for both of those shows if their creators would like to hear from me.
Absolutely. So, we will do it. We can do some spinoff shows. Let's totally do it. Awesome, everyone. Well, thanks for being here. We really appreciate it. We'll be back next Thursday, 9 p.m. Same bat time, same bat channel. Every Thursday, 9 p.m. We'll keep you posted if anything comes up, but it should be totally fine. Otherwise, have a wonderful night, and we will see you all soon.
Hey, good night.
Cheers.